Welcome back to Neuroconversant Leadership, where we talk about effective communication, whether you are neurodivergent yourself, you're talking to someone else who is, or you're just dealing with someone who's very neurodifferent than you are. I'm Jeremy Doran. I help great individual contributors, especially engineers, become great managers and leaders. Are you a person who struggles with asking for help? Do you ask for help too often? Do you have a hard time saying no when someone asks you for help? Today, we're going to discuss some of the do's and don'ts when asking for or being asked for help. I was recently in a conversation with someone who coaches students on agency, and he was referring to taking action and exerting power as the meaning of agency. Basically, students need to be active agents in their own learning, and he often works with people who are neurodivergent in some way, and they may have unique ways of learning. No two people learn the same way. And in a classroom, it makes sense that teachers would teach things in a way that works the best for the most people. If a student comes to them for help, then a discussion of their unique style of learning can happen. But how many students who struggle are proactive in asking for help or even know how to ask for the right kind of help? My response to that was, so basically teachers are there to share knowledge and help students learn, but it's really the student's responsibility to learn, and if they're struggling, to ask for what would help them specifically. And I was excited about this because, frankly, that's not just something that students suffer from. That is a problem in the workplace as well. Managers are often frustrated by team members who need help but don't ask for it, or ask for help in a way that is just frankly a burden on that manager. Early on, when I was managing, I had a small team and we were very busy, especially me. And there were two different incidents that happened, and they really helped me understand the benefit of asking questions and asking for help well, and also in taking responsibility for asking for the right kind of help. One day I was running around, it was like my hair was on fire, and one of the people on the team came up to me, and she was fairly new, so I didn't want to cut her off or be short with her. So I stopped what I was doing, and she started telling me a story. Now, the story was going on for longer than I thought was necessary, but again, she was new. I wanted to make her feel welcome, so I hung in there and I let her tell the story, and at the end of it, she just kind of stopped. I'm like, and? She's like, well, I need something. I said, well, what is it? She said, can I get the key to the supply cabinet? All she needed was the key to the supply cabinet, and I just spent 5 minutes that felt like an eternity while my hair was burning just because she wanted a key. So I did best thing that I was able to in that particular moment. I handed her the key and I silently walked away. The next day, when things were not yet hectic and I was internally calm, I invited her into my office to talk. I spent some time talking about how the issue went with the client and how it got resolved. Then I asked her why she felt like she needed to give me that much detail before asking for the key. And she said, oh, well, I just thought you'd want to know before handing it over. And I suspect she's one of those people who, if you ask them what time it is, they're one of those people who will tell you how to build a watch. She's really one of those people who wants to explain things before getting to the point of what was needed. But she also seemed to feel like I needed that information in order to be willing to give her that key. So we ended up negotiating an agreement on how to handle this going forward. I made the commitment that even though she's new, I would trust her to make good decisions. And if she asked me for something, my default response was going to be yes. In return, she had to commit to asking for what she wanted as directly as possible and only give me the background story if I asked for it. This was not an easy agreement for either one of us. But once we both agreed to it, our interactions got so much better. Everything was much improved. Another incident that happened, it actually happened multiple times a day, every day. Someone would come up to me and they would share their problem. And they would either ask me how to solve it, or even worse, they would just expect me to solve it. Basically, they were taking their problems and they were making it my problem. Eventually, I really understood what was happening, and I decided to invest the time that it took to stop this. I wanted to empower them, and I wanted to save my own time down the road. So the next time someone came to me with a problem, my response was, what would you do if I wasn't here? And they always came back with, well, I'd call you, or I'd email you. Nope. I'm not available in any way. You cannot call me or email me. What would you do? They then try to call someone else, or they try a million things of asking someone. I took all of those options away. They had to come up with a solution. What would they try? And they resisted. Oh boy, did they resist. But eventually they would come up with a solution. And if it was anywhere close to what I would do and it wasn't going to cause harm, I would say, great, go ahead and try it. Once you do, let me know how it goes. And it took a number of iterations, but after asking that every time they came to me with a problem, they eventually came to me with both a problem and a potential solution. And all they really did was ask for my permission to try their solution. Eventually, and this was like nirvana, they developed agency or responsibility. Instead of coming to me with a problem that was not yet solved, they would come to me and tell me about a problem that they had in the past, what they did, and what the outcome was. They were no longer coming to me to help solve a problem. They were coming to me to show off the fact that they were able to overcome an issue. They were now viewing problems as opportunities for them to show what they were capable of. What a wonderful turn of events that was. And I'm not saying that was all the time. There were some times they could not solve the problem and they did need my help. But when they could, they did. It was wonderful. It saved me so much time, and it empowered them and encouraged them to keep growing. So how do these two stories relate to my conversation with the person who coaches students? I can see 4 lessons in here, and they apply at both school and work in slightly different ways. But if they were learned in school, man, it would make work life so much better for everyone. So the first lesson is asking directly for help and not beating around the bush. So for students, don't just state a problem and wait for the other person to volunteer to help. I see that all the time. People state a problem and then just wait, and they hesitate to ask. And when they do, it's not specific. So for students, if you have a problem or you need help with something, ask for help directly. And if you need something specific, ask for that specific thing, not just general help. For people in corporations or companies or team members, employees, it's the same thing, but I would add, don't flinch when you're asking it. If you ask for something that you think is big, it might not seem like that big an ask to the person you're asking. Like, for instance, the key to a supply cabinet. But if you flinch while you're asking, it suddenly makes the other person stop and think, ooh, maybe this is a big deal and I should consider whether or not I should do it. It's a lot like stating the price of an object. If someone asks you how much something costs and you just say the price with confidence, great, there's no problem. If you say it and you kind of lean back and flinch a little bit, the other person's automatically going to think that the object's overpriced. It's the same with asking for help. If you flinch when you ask, they're going to think it's a big deal. If you just say, this is what I need, it's a lot easier to get them to agree. That's for both students and employees. The second of the 4 lessons is give trust and respect. So parents, teachers, and managers, when people admit to having a problem or a challenge or just not knowing something, congratulate them. Congratulate them for recognizing that they have a need and congratulating them for asking for help. If someone gets chastised or made to feel small when they need help with something, they might feel like they're on their own. And then a problem that could have been quickly resolved might turn into a disaster. Lesson 3 is take as much responsibility as you can when you are asking for help. At the very least, try to think of the exact thing that you need and let the other person know what that is. So for students, don't just say something like, I don't get it. Try to narrow down what's making something difficult to learn and what would be helpful in making learning easier. Are you a more visual learner and you need to see images? Do you need to physically enact something out in order for it to make sense? Is it easier to learn from other students than it is from teachers? Take the responsibility to figure out not just what your problem is, but some potential solutions to the problem, and ask for those solutions. Ask for permission to enact them, not just state what your problem is and expect them to come up with a solution for you. For people in work, never dump your problems on your boss. Trust me, they're going to figure out what it is that you're doing, and when it comes time for raises and promotions, they're going to favor the people who make their jobs easier. And someone who dumps problems on them is not making their job any easier. So anytime you go to your boss with a problem, make sure you also have a potential solution. Even if it's not the solution that they decide to go with, they are going to appreciate that you had one and that you are trying to resolve the solution. Fourth and final is empower them. For teachers and for parents, make your default response be yes. It's so easy to say no to kids. We do it all the time, and I think that's why 2-year-olds love to say the word no. It's because they hear it so often they get used to being told no. Let them know that they are starting from a place of having your trust. Start with small things that may not have much repercussion if they don't go well. And if you trust them with something small, let them know exactly what the expected outcome is and encourage them to succeed. As they succeed, the level of trust will grow. And the more they know you trust them, the more likely they are to share what their struggles are. And as a parent, especially, how important is that to know? How important is it when you're dealing with a teenager to have built up the level of trust it takes for them to share when something is challenging in their life, in their world? So empower them, trust them. For managers, let employees know exactly what the hard and fast rules are, which are never to be deviated from. But within that framework, let it go. Trust them to make good decisions. Here are the things that you must always do. Here are the things you must never do. Within those boundaries, I'm going to trust you to come up with solutions. And if they do work within that framework and make a mistake, let it be okay. Let them make the mistakes. It's how we all learn. If they're within the boundaries that you set, then no major problems can happen. So give them the boundaries, give them the structure, and within that structure, give them the freedom to explore on their own. Give them that kind of trust and empower them. So those are the 4 lessons that I took from this conversation and my experiences. Asking for help and being able to give help are skills that all of us can improve on and we would all benefit from. As students or employees, it's important to ask for help when you need it. But it's also important to ask for help in the right way and not just drop your problems onto someone else. As parents, teachers, managers, it's important to show people that it is okay for them to admit that they need help. But it's just as important to empower them to start learning how to solve their own problems for themselves. Thank you for listening to another episode of Neuroconversant Leadership. Now I am going to ask you for your help. Yep. I need help, and I admit it. Hopefully, I'm going to ask in a direct way, and it'll benefit everyone, me and you and someone else you know. Do me a favor and think of a manager or teacher you know who has talked about people not taking responsibility for their own problems, or talks about how much people complain without taking action. If you know people like that, send them to my website where they can listen to this episode of the podcast. The website is neuroconversantleadership.com. Once they go there, they can listen to this podcast, and if it helps them, we've all made the world a better place. Thanks again for listening, and have a great week.